Good afternoon, everybody. How are you today? Good. Thank you. Well, welcome to the Insurance Day Live America Speaker Seminar. I'm Dr. Xiao Yingxie, Associate Director of the Center for Insurance Studies. Many of you know me because you're taking my Finance 360 class right now. I'm here today to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Tony Joseph, to you guys. I feel that I can spend 30 minutes to introduce Tony to you because this gentleman has more than 47 years experience in insurance and reinsurance industry. So let's make it short, okay? Because you want to listen to him rather than listen to me. Okay. Tony begins his career in the Lloyd's market in London as an insurance broker with Sedgwick. And then he became an underwriter with one of the Lloyd's of London syndicate. Since 1978, Tony has gradually become an expert in the reinsurance area. He worked as a reinsurance underwriter, reinsurance broker, and surplus lines broker. And most recently, Tony served as a senior VP at Guy Carpenter in Los Angeles, so a lot like a rich experience. Tony joined Lloyd's of America in September 2004. It's about 10 years ago. Yep. And he holds like a couple of professional designations from ACII, CIP. I believe Tony will explain to you what those designations are.
The ACII is the same as the CPCU, UK version.
And Tony is also the past president of the IRU of America, another reinsurance association. And currently, as the Western Regional Director of the Lloyd's of America, Tony has devoted much of his time, runs the Los Angeles office and oversees brokers' education and relations. Today is a great honor to have Tony here because he is going to help us pierce the veil of Lloyd's. So as insurance students, if you talk about insurance and risk management, a must-to-know thing is you have to know what is Lloyd's and its history. And I believe today Tony will give you a great story about Lloyd's. Now let's give Tony a big welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just before you get any funny ideas, this fell off already. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, I started working at Lloyd's in January 1965, so this is my 50th year in the business at the end of this year. I started when I was 5, so just remember I'm not as old as you think. I was an American casualty broker. I subsequently moved to these shores in 1978. Marsh was my sponsor. Marsh now owns Sedgwick's, the first company I worked for. They put me up at the Plaza Hotel in New York for 2 weeks. They had plenty of money in those days. And I subsequently learned what Home Alone was like, which was pretty interesting. If you've seen that film, most of it was done in the Plaza Hotel, which sadly isn't there anymore. I'm going to tell you a lot about Lloyd's. First of all, has anybody been to Lloyd's? Okay, we're going to spend an hour at Lloyd's, and I think we'll have some fun doing this. And feel free to ask questions as we go. Don't wait till the end or anything. Just feel free to ask the questions as we go. The more interaction we get, the better. So there's a lot of mystique about Lloyd's, yes, and there really isn't. That's what the bottom line is. That's why I'm here to tell you there isn't a lot of mystique. Once you understand how it works, it's a lot easier than you think. And I'll hopefully explain that to you. And if, as I say, any questions, just let me know. Right, what is it? Well, first of all, it is not an insurance company. Lloyd's is a market of insurers. Lloyd's runs the market. It was founded by Edward Lloyd in 1688 as a coffee house. And it was frequented by ship's captains and rich merchants, all who needed insurance. So the local broker at the time, and there were brokers at the time back in 1688, would go to see the underwriters at Lloyd's. And they were marine. And basically what happened was they would underwrite for themselves, and there was a need for insurance, and if this gentleman here had a ship going out, this lady here would insure it, but she'd make a proviso. When mine goes out, you insure it. And that's how it started to evolve. Now what happened was, we suddenly decided, I was sitting there with all you in the coffee house, some of us decided we weren't particularly good at insurance, but we thought he was. So what did we do? We syndicated behind him, we went off and did our ship's captains and rich merchants, and he underwrote for us. And that's how syndicates at Lloyd's started to evolve. What makes us unique is we're not an insurance company. We are a market. It takes a long time to evolve that. It's taken us, this is our 326th year in business. And you'll see as we go through why it's important, and these things don't happen overnight. How do you reach us? We only do business through insurance brokers. Here in the US, you can't, if you're a retail agent or a retail broker without a surplus line broker, which is the wholesaler, you can't get to us. You have to come through a wholesale operation to get to us. People like Marsh, Aon, Willis, Lockton's, etc. have their own surplus line brokers, and they come directly into London because they have London operations to do it with. The smaller retailers and the agents all have to come through a surplus line broker. That's how you reach us. I'll show you what we look like in the US, and I'll show you what our Vision 2025 is going to look like. Hopefully, who knows what's going to happen in 10 years, but it'll give you an idea. That's our building at Lloyd's. This is the 86 building. Sits on the same site as the 1928 building. I said this is our 326th year in business, and we've never moved more than 1/2 of 1 mile since we started. You may wonder why that is. Well, the City of London's only 1 square mile anyway, so if you want to stay in the city, that's it. It was laid out by the Romans, and if you do go to London and you do go to the city, look at the policemen's helmets. Not only are they a slightly different shape, but they have a different badge, and you walk outside the city, you see the Metropolitan Police, and they have a different badge, etc. So the people in the City of London are very close to Lloyd's, and it's the financial district. It's more the insurance financial district now. The banks have moved, and I'll show you where they went to. Now, when this building was being built, and it's being called the coffee pot, it's being called the oil rig, all sorts of things it's being called, but the interesting part about it is everything that's normally inside a building, on our building's on the outside. So the elevators run up and down there. These are the stairwells. These are the men's and ladies' toilets. The air conditioning, heating pipes are there. The cranes are permanent. They run the window washing up and down. But when it was being built in 84, it opened in 86. The Queen opened it in 86. And we're very close to the royal family. She opened the previous building in 1958 as well. So, and if you go on Lloyds.com, type in videos, you'll see her in Lloyd's in May, I think it was February this year. There were 10,000 people in that building when she came in to open a memorial for our 325th year in business. But when the building was being built, Sachs Riley was a friend of mine. He was the chairman in 1984. A newspaper man from the Times newspaper in London went to see him and said, how can Lloyd's possibly put up a building that's going to look like that? Now, I will quote to you what Sachs Riley said, because he told me. He said, if Lloyd's can't take a risk, who the bloody well can? And the answer is we had the building that you see. It's now a listed building, but it's very efficient for us, as you'll see when I take you inside. The old building, which is right here, was the 58 building where I started. That's no longer there. That's been demolished. And Willis has their headquarters there. But at the front side of our existing building is the original entrance for the 1928 building. So we keep the history going as much as we possibly can. So, we're a market, we're not a company. We started in 1688 as a coffee house. Most institutions in the UK had coffee houses. The stockbrokers had one, legal profession had one, and coffee had only been drunk for about 20 years. You would have thought we'd have started as a tea house. Well, we didn't. We started as a coffee house because tea wasn't around in those days. We do a lot of complex and specialty business. Most of you have probably heard a lot of the stuff we do. But we also do a huge amount of small commercial and personal lines business. How do we do that? We have managing general agents here who have underwriting authority on our behalf. And they have a binding contract and they write the small business. We'll write 40 billion of premium at Lloyd's worldwide this year. About 29% of that is small business. That small business facilities that we have around, and we have about 1,000 people in this country, entities that have facilities that underwrite for us. Got about 2,700 around the world. It is a very good way for us to get small business, which we otherwise wouldn't have a vehicle to get. We're fully international. I'll show you that as we go. We don't celebrate on the 25s anymore. We did celebrate the 300th anniversary. We normally only celebrate on the 100s and the 50s these days. But this is our 326th year. And I'll show you how the Performance Management Directorate works. They're the ones that monitor how the market is operating, and that's a very important thing for us. We only do business through brokers. Don't let anybody else tell you we're not going to do anything else, because we're not. We have various regulators. Yeah, we've had a few regulators since prior to 2007 that weren't particularly good. You may have heard of Lloyds Bank in the UK. It's nothing to do with us, but they're owned by UK Uncle Sam. The regulators are all trying to get us in the insurance industry and reinsurance industry aligned with the banks. We are the last people that are going to do that, because we didn't do anything wrong. Neither did the AIG insurance companies. They all operated in the proper way. The only reason that they had a problem was because they had 5 guys in London who were doing a lot of weird and wonderful things that Hank Greenberg, when he was the president of AIG, knew everything about. When Mr. Spitzer came along and forced him out, my contention is that the new guy coming in was a nice chap. He didn't really know they were there. And they just went, as we call in London, apeshit, and they carried on, and that's what happened. But their insurance entities performed perfectly, and look what happened. They all came out of the problem in the end with Uncle Sam helping them out. We were delighted they survived. They're a good operation, they're a good training ground. Hopefully we're the same. So we've always been a fan of theirs. But the regulators keep changing, and we all know you've got to keep educating regulators. They're not always there for very long, but when they are there, you just got to keep at them, and we do that here and all around the world. We did celebrate the 300th anniversary of Edward Lloyd passing away on the 25th of February 1713. Guess what? He's buried about half a mile from where we are today, so he hasn't left the city either. That's what we might have looked like in the 1890s. If you go to London, that building is still there. It's the Royal Exchange. It's by the Bank of England. It's about a quarter of a mile from where we are. The gentleman sitting at the front there, without the top hat, they say he's still at Lloyd's. And why do they say he's still at Lloyd's? Well, people see him around. He's waiting for the hard market to come around, and the hard market isn't going to come around for a long time, i.e. prices aren't going to go up. I found that at Lloyd's about 5 years ago. The caption was hard and soft markets. This goes back to 1890. Hard and soft markets were talked about back then as well as they are today. We are in a soft market right now, as you're probably well aware. Soft market creates a lot of capacity. A lot of people are interested in our business because interest rates are low, and other parts of the business, for our business, it looks easy for a lot of people. So we'll see how it kind of pans out. That's the inside. Okay, so the underwriters sit at what we call the underwriting boxes. They're a carryover from what the coffee house might have originally looked like. And the brokers are the ones that move around the room. We don't call it the underwriting room, it's just called the room. 4 floors of underwriting, 12 floors in the building. And if you stand down here and you look straight up, there's a glass dome over the top of the building that throws all the light in. Now you might think with 4,000 people a day going through Lloyd's, it'd be noisy in there. Well, it actually isn't. It's soundproof well enough, and most of the business is done on a face-to-face basis. Personal relationships to us at Lloyd's are very important, and we've had clients like Disney, Boeing, Chevron, 50 years plus, because we do things a little differently, and those sort of companies have tough claims when they have them. And the big difference between us in London and here in the US is you start as a broker in London and you move to the underwriting side. Whereas here in the US, normally what happens is you start on the underwriting side and move to the broking side. So there's a lot of longevity with the underwriters and claims people, which means the big risk managers know when they get a difficult claim who they're going to talk to. And those people have been around a long time and they understand their business, and things get taken care of, probably that might not be done in other markets because of the long-term relationships. Now we have a famous, this is the rostrum here where the clock is. That stands in exactly the same place as it did in 1928. So effectively we built the 86 building around it. Underneath that we have a famous bell. Some of you probably heard of it. It's called the Lutein bell. Rings once for bad news, Exxon Valdez, Deepwater Horizon, Costa Concordia, those sort of losses that we have. It rings twice for good. It always rings twice once a year for the Queen's birthday. You might be interested where we got it from. Well, we had a habit in the 1790s of pinching ships from the French. We pinched many of them. But we pinched the Lutein in 1795. Then, however, we were foolish enough to fill it with gold bullion and send it off to Holland. It sank on a sandbank in the North Sea. Most of the gold bullion is still down there. The bell was salvaged in 1859, and it hangs there. It's more ceremonial these days because, as we all know, communications are a lot better than they used to be. But when I was an underwriter in the 70s in Lloyd's, it probably rang about 6 times a year. The whole market went quiet, an announcement was made. It was normally marine loss, and the marine underwriters obviously wouldn't like what they heard. But sometimes it was a marine ship that was overdue, and 2 days later it ringed twice and it showed up and they'd all jump up and down. They didn't have a total loss. But it doesn't often ring these days, but it's more ceremonial when it does. But when the Queen came in February, it rang twice, obviously for good news. That's a closer up shot. So you can see here, these are the underwriters sitting, and these are the brokers broking to them. Yeah, we still use paper and slips and things like that. You've got one in front of you, that's the original copy of the original slip for the Titanic. Most of our business is still done on that basis. I have a friend of mine who runs the Aegis Syndicate right here, and I suggested to him when I was in London about 2 months ago that maybe when he had pictures taken of his underwriting box, he had people at it. He said, well, please don't tell anybody. I'm going, well, that's fine. I'll tell everybody. They've got to have people at it next time. But that just gives you an idea of how the business is done. So, just for you, make sure you ladies understand, we have a lot of ladies at Lloyd's. First lady brokers came into Lloyd's at January 1, 1974. That's not quite true because that was a holiday. It was the 2nd of January 1974. There were 8 of them. Ladies, I can tell you, they raised the bar big time for the male brokers. I was an underwriter at the time. 8 of them really did. Now imagine we're all sitting there in white shirts and pinstripe suits, and lady brokers come in, they're dressed in red, etc. They really caused a sensation, but they were really good. First one came and sat down next to me on the 2nd of January, and I get this note from my boss. What are you going to do now, Tone? I'm going, well, I'm going to write all her business. She used to work for me at Sedgwick's. She used to work for a gentleman called Roy Oddie, at the time ran Sweat and Crawford, and they are a very integral part of what we are, obviously have been going forward. Our new CEO, she's probably been with us 9 months, is Inga Beale. She's our first lady CEO. So we're moving into the fast track now, and a lot of the ladies run syndicates, etc., so make sure you understand that. There's a photo of the lutein bell, and you look straight up the shaft, you can see where all the light comes in. It goes right up to the 12th floor. Now, this is the lost book. We've been doing this since 1774. This one will be open at today's date. That one will be open at 100 years ago today. So if you took yourself back to the 15th of April 2012, the one on the right was opened at the Titanic. We were the insurer of the Titanic, as you can see from the slips on the table. Feel free to take one. You can photograph it, show it to your friends, etc. We call it at Lloyd's. It wasn't one of our best days, but it was definitely memorable. That lost book is permanently open now, sitting opposite those. Gentleman on the right, he's called a waiter. He's a carryover from the coffee house days. He doesn't serve coffee anymore. He runs the building. And if you want to know what goes on in the building, you'll always see him on the outside. They'll wear the top hat. Inside, they don't. There's a head waiter. Happens to be a gentleman at the moment. I always make it my business. I've been around Lloyd's so long to go and talk to him or her, as it happens, whatever it is, to about 15 minutes. The first thing I do when I go to Lloyd's. Why is that? Because they know everything that's going on. They know all the politics that's happened. They know all the people have been through. You can make yourself look a hero in 15 minutes if you go and fill yourself in with what they want to do. My colleagues often tell me, it'd be interesting to find out how you do all that. And I said, well, I'll teach you at some point. But they are an intricate part of what we do, and they'll always be with us. So, our strengths, and I'll show you how our market oversight works. Our brand. Pretty much everybody knows who we are. Our reputation. 1906 earthquake, San Francisco. Cuthbert Heath was our underwriter at the time. He cabled his agents and said, and I quote, "Pay all our policyholders in full, irrespective of the terms and conditions of their policies." He didn't know it was earthquake shock, fire, or fire following. Lloyd's underwriters paid out something over $50 million back then. Today that would be well into the billions. But as we were the only carrier that paid all its valid claims, cemented our relationship for doing business here in the US. Now, Cuthbert Heath was an entrepreneur. Whether that word was around in those days, I couldn't tell you, but he was, and I'll tell you why. In 1907, he came up with the idea of writing reinsurance, excess loss, catastrophe, quake, wind, flood, etc. First buyer of that was the Fireman's Fund. Obviously kept them in business. The other thing he noticed, and you guys are probably all aware of this, there was no business interruption back then. He came up with the idea of writing business interruption cover. What did that do? Filled the need, and also started to get our money back a lot faster from the losses we paid out. So he was an integral part of making sure that the US market survived, and because of all that, he cemented our relationship for doing business here in the US. We have full access to worldwide business through the brokers. Now, Lloyd's is effectively a mutual, because we have, and the reason we do is we're the largest surplus line writer here in the US, but we're the only one that has a guarantee fund. And I'll explain to you exactly how it works. I can assure you it's a lot stronger than any of the state guarantee funds, and there's no funny numbers involved in there. So that makes us unique. And because all the syndicates have to pay in each year a percentage of their income, which I'll explain in a minute, it makes us mutual underneath, which for those of you in the finance business know if you're mutualised underneath and you've got a kitty underneath, you need less capital up front. So it helps us to operate a lot much more efficiently. Mutuality also gives us a lot of market cohesion. We do not have the same antitrust laws as you do here in the US. We have them, but they're not nearly as stringent. So we can actually do business at Lloyd's, we can discuss price, and everybody does. And if you don't do it there, there's a pub round the corner. It was founded in 1775, so we do it there too. So we now do our stuff in pubs. But we're able to do that, and that's why the market is able to flourish as it does. We have a huge amount of underwriting expertise for reasons I said. The underwriter tends to stay a long time, as do claims expertise. Because our antitrust laws are more flexible, we have much more flexibility, and we have more innovation because of all that. Ratings, we're best A, S&P A+, Fitch AA-. They're all positive. Fitch just increased our rating from A+ to AA-. To me, that sounds though we're going the wrong way, but it isn't. We're going upwards. We have global licenses, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. That's why you'll see a lot of American companies and various companies from around the world want to come into Lloyd's. Why do they want to do that? One of the reasons they want to do that is because it's very expensive and time-consuming to go and get global licenses. We've had them forever. So if they can get through the door with us and put up their flag, then they're off and running. Now, we've been around for a very long time. And yep, we had asbestos and we had pollution. In 1996, we formed a runoff company called Equitas, which was for all Lloyd's syndicates, all business, all years, 1992 and prior. Most of that was obviously asbestos and pollution. Why did we do that? Nobody will commute with you if you're an ongoing entity. But if you set up a runoff company, the inference is, right, at some point it's going to run out of money. And the bottom line is everybody starts commuting. They may not get 100 cents on the dollar, they may get 80, 95, whatever it happens to be. But there could be a finite number. Now that ran so well that in 2007, the oracle from Omaha, as I call him, Mr. Buffett, came along and he bought it. He took the $8.7 billion of reserves and he put it in national indemnity. All the employees are employed by Berkshire Hathaway, and he's done 3 since. He did one for AIG for $2 billion, he did one for CNA in 2010 for $1.8 billion, and he did one about 3 months ago for Liberty Mutual for $3 billion. That's where he gets most of his cash from, and that's why he buys Heinz and things like that with it. Huge amount of it comes from our industry. Yes, it'll all run off over time, but he can do a lot, probably more with the money than we could, purely and simply because he can commingle funds. We, as an insurance industry, can't do that. So we're a subscription market. We have experts in all classes of business. We have more than one in a lot of cases. You can get more than one quote out of Lloyd's. But what you will get, if you have a good lead underwriter, and it's a big risk and you need a lot of capacity, the other syndicates will follow. So the brokers can pick up capacity extremely quickly. The lead and follow takes a long time. If you guys want to go back in history to the early 80s, the New York Insurance Exchange, they tried to form it. We thought it was a great idea, but it doesn't happen overnight, and sadly it failed because they wanted it to happen overnight. It's kind of like us Europeans. Everybody wants the EU to happen overnight. And I always remind them, hey, look, these guys, I've lived here for 36 years. It took them a long time to get it together. They had a civil war. You can't expect these things to happen overnight. Just Lloyd's wouldn't happen overnight, and just because the insurance exchange in New York just doesn't have, these things don't happen overnight. Fully broker market, fully international business. Now we have syndicates of different sizes. That's important because our biggest ones like Catlin, Hiscox, Beasley, right between 1.5 and $2 billion of premium annually. Smallest ones right about 200 million. But people who run smaller syndicates think differently than people who run big syndicates. So we listen to all of them. They all have their input. The oldest gentleman there runs his own syndicate. He's done it forever. I used to broker him in 1966. He's still there every day. His name is Michael Miko, and I saw him last time I was over there. He'll probably get carried out at some point in time. But by the same token, he adds a lot to the equation because he thinks differently, and that's what makes a market flourish. Here's the City of London. It's a little out of date, but we're right here. That's what we call the gherkin. You can have a lot of other names for that one. The banks are down about 5 miles away on the other buildings there. That's down at Canary Wharf. That's been up there about 20 years. We've got 2 new buildings. One of them is where Aon is, which is right here. It's just been put up. It's called the cheese grater. Look at your cheese grater next time you go home. It looks just like that. The other one's called the walkie-talkie. Yeah, it looks like a telephone. It comes down like this, and you can put your ear up to it. Some of you may have seen back in August last year, well, in 2013 in the paper, there was a problem on the walkie-talkie. Believe it or not, in August, sometimes we get sun in London, but a sunbeam came down, hit the underside, went straight down and burned the Jaguar car paint off, and the guy got back to his car, had almost no paint left. That's unusual for us in London, so of course they're redesigning the building. Interestingly, a lot of our syndicates are moving into the building, and now it's open, but they got a reduced rent, so they were pretty happy about that. So these things do happen, but architecture in London is what it used to be a lot of this, and now it's a lot of everything else other than that. So it makes it a lot more interesting. But that's the city. The insurance industry is right in the middle of it. So if you look at Lloyd's, and you look at our competitors, friendly competitors, if you walk from Chaucer to Lloyd's, probably take you about 4 minutes. Point is, everything's done on foot. Everybody moves around on foot. All the brokers know each other. Doesn't matter which company they work for. They all know each other. The underwriters all know each other. They travel on the train together. It's a very, very personal relationship business. The brokers, to walk from Marsh to Lloyd's is 10 minutes. So you'll see everybody moves around on foot. And a lot of it's done that way. And Aon is just obviously moving their building. They're going to be right here. Bill Berkeley of the W.R. Berkeley is putting up a building right in the corner. It's called Gotham City. I don't quite know what it's going to look like yet, but he's going to do that, and we'll see what happens. But the point of this is the market surrounds Lloyd's. Lloyd's will do about 40 billion, depending on what the market conditions are. But we also have pretty much every company you can think of in the world operating in London, whether it's from China, Korea, Australia, South America, or wherever. They'll do an additional 36 billion. So the London market's closing in on about 80 billion of premium on an annual basis. And the reason is, a lot of it comes into London is because the brokers are all there, the markets are there, and they see business internationally. So we had a colourful history. Yeah, we started in 1688. There's Cuthbert Heath. He actually got us into the US in the 1880s, purely and simply by writing a reinsurance policy for a British company with an American subsidiary. That's how we got in. San Francisco earthquake I told you about. Lloyd's Central Guarantee Fund was founded in 1925, and I'll explain to you exactly how it works. Each syndicate at the present time has to pay in 1/2 of 1% of its annual premium income each year. And if you don't pay, you can't operate. It's as simple as that. Now, if you went back prior to 9/11, it was 0.5%. Then 9/11 hit. We lost about 10 or 12 syndicates. The reason we lost them was because people that underbought in reinsurance underestimated the potential of a loss, like the World Trade Center, which got hit from every class of business, and they went out of business. But if you were a broker or insurance company over here and we were reinsuring you, it was seamless. You wouldn't have seen it because Lloyd's Central Guarantee Fund picked up those claims. Now what happens is, of course, then the central fund gets depleted. Now 3 functions that Lloyd's, who runs the market, really has are holding the ratings, maintaining the licenses, and maintaining Lloyd's Central Guarantee Fund. So the corporation Lloyd's turned around and said, right, we're going to have to increase the ante. So it went from 0.5% to 1.25%. And it went to back to 1% in 2004. Then Katrina, Rita and Wilma hit. We lost no syndicates. And it stayed at 1%, went down to 0.5% in 2008, and it's been 0.5% ever since. Point of this is, first of all, you can see that something's changed in the way we run our businesses and the way we're managed. And I'll explain to you that in a minute, because we haven't lost any syndicates basically since that time. But the trigger, if you look at the state of California, the maximum you're going to get out of the guarantee fund here is $500,000. And not everybody's going to get it. If your asset size is big, you don't get anything. Texas is $300,000. Our trigger is your policy limit, and it covers every class of business that we write, whether it's marine, aviation, energy, reinsurance, you name it. So it's much, much broader. So as I always tell the surplus line brokers, people don't like to pay surplus line tax, but I said, at least if you buy from Lloyd's, you get something for your money. You get something, you get the benefit of our guarantee fund. And it's very, very large at the moment, you'll see. Now, we're admitted in 2 states. We're surplus line in all states, but we're admitted in 2 states, Illinois, and that's Kentucky. Yeah, you can see what we do in Kentucky. We write a lot of horses and things like that. It's a huge amount of our business. It's very competitive. But we always have 2 or 3 running in the, we insure of the 4-legged ones running in the Kentucky Derby and others. And we normally have 2 or 3 of the little guys on top for their disability as well. This year was no exception. So, but it's an interesting business. If you want to get into the equine business, be careful. They call it, you can be, if you watch it, don't watch what you're doing. You can get in the second-hand car dealer arrangement. It's tough business, but it's interesting. Now, in 1939, the UK was at war with Germany. Your powers that be in Washington rightly decided the chances of monies going backwards and forwards across the Atlantic would be remote, which was true. So they made us set up the Lloyd's American Trust Fund. It sits in Citibank in New York, in cash, and it's collateral for our reinsurance writings and our surplus lines writings. And it also houses, because we're admitted in Illinois and Kentucky, the 2 trust funds for those 2 states. About $12 billion in cash sitting there. Not a great use of the money, but it's collateral. And when after 9/11, we used a bit of it because it was onshore, and then we've topped it back up again. So it stays there at around $12 billion. It will continue to do that. So Lloyd's today. Yeah, this is the sort of stuff you probably think we do. Yep, we do a huge amount of satellite business. We write bridges. We write a huge amount of renewable energy business, whether it's wave wash, wind farms, you name it, we're into them. 10% of our business is energy. Texas is obviously is our biggest state in that respect. We do a lot of energy in the North Sea and anywhere else where they're drilling for oil. We write 27% of the world's aviation business, so you're in good hands when you fly because we're there most of the time. 12% of the world's marine business. And then we reinsure pretty much everybody you can think of, from State Farm, Allstate, USAA, Liberty, etc., downwards, both here in the US and worldwide, against wind, basically wind, flood, quake. So yeah, we get hit in 2011 by the Japanese quake, quakes in Chile, quakes in New Zealand, bushfires and brush fires, etc. in Australia, floods in Thailand. Yeah, we get hit by all those, as you'll see as we go through. But that's our business, so we touch pretty much everybody. And our reinsurance business is probably about 42%. The balance is insurance. Betty Grable was our most famous insured. We wrote her in the 40s for $1 million each. Her legs were insured for back then. I showed that to my daughter when she was 15. She's now 34. And she's looking at that, and she's looking at me. And all she said was, in her normal fashion, "Dad, you won't have to worry about insuring yours because $2 will do it." And she hadn't changed much, and life is just, that's how it is. But here's some stuff we do, and you probably see a lot of these. The top left one there, just before the Oscars, ladies go to the bank to get their jewellery out. Yeah, we insure it when it's in the bank. We also insure it when it comes out. The gentleman in the middle there, he's a winemaker from France. We do his sense of taste and smell for $10 million as we're all sitting here. You wouldn't want to try his wine if he couldn't smell it or taste it. Troy Palomaro, the Pittsburgh Steelers. We used to do his hair when he was on the field. Why? Because he did all the ads for Head & Shoulders, and Procter & Gamble bought a $1 million policy. It's no longer enforced, but it was for quite some time. If you go to London, there's a famous coffee chain called Costa, C-O-S-T-A. That's Mr. Costa. Purportedly, he won't take a bag of coffee out of his warehouse till he's personally had a cup of coffee out of it. I don't know how he manages that, but that's what he says. So we insure his sense of taste and smell for $10 million. If anybody's got any questions, let me know, but I'll keep going. Ugly Betty, we used to do her lovely smile for $10 million. We do Santa to the Stars. He comes out in New York and he comes out in LA every year. He's concerned his beard's going to catch fire and things like that. And then we do pop groups and all sorts of other people. Ask your dentist who insures their hand. If you happen to be unlucky enough to get the surgeon, make sure he's well insured by us or whoever it happens to be beforehand. It was only about 4 months ago I got a call from an auctioneer, wanted to insure his voice. Yeah, we can take care of things like that. But we do a lot of that. The only thing we haven't been asked to do is an eclipse, but maybe we'll have to do an eclipse at some point. That's the middle one. But here's one we did back in October 2011. Ladies, you'll all know who this is. You're going to have to forgive me for this, but that's Holly Madison. We did what we call at Lloyd's her upper deck for $1 million. She was appearing in the Peep Show. She was the last lady who was trying to marry Hugh Hefner. Business insurance that comes from, I could show you, I've got it in my briefcase here. They went to see her. And of course, she does everything, how wonderful Lloyd's is and doing all this sort of stuff. And it was interesting because it was about 7 months ago, and I'd been thinking about this for a while, and one lady at the back suddenly said to me, "Did you say that was $1 million each?" And I'm going, "No, Leah. In insurance terms, it's combined single limit." I'm sure you've heard that before. So it's, we do a lot of that stuff, the same page as Walmart. Very rarely get claims, but look at the free advertising we get. So she was very complimentary about us, etc. Now, we think out of the box a little bit. That's 1984. That's the shuttle picking up one of our insured satellites. Hughes put that satellite up. The solar panels did not open. They declared a total loss, about $100 million. Our lead underwriter at the time called NASA. He said, "You got a shuttle going up. Have you got a payload coming back?" And they said, "No." So we said, "Okay, would you pick the satellite up?" Yep, they picked it up. That's them picking it up, brought it back down, gave it back to them in El Segundo. They fixed it, put it back up, saved us about $75 million. We'll think outside the box when we can, underwriting and claims. And, you know, they got what they wanted, and we saved ourselves a lot of money. Claims were paid, but you can do things differently. You don't have to just cave in if you don't feel like it. And NASA took that picture. So this will show you exactly how Lloyd's works. If you've got reinsurance and commercial lines, it goes into one of 202 Lloyd's brokers. Because when the broker goes from here into London, they go through a Lloyd's broker. It may be one they own, it may be an independent. Vast majority of those 202 brokers do US business, but they don't all, but the vast majority do. If you're looking at personal lines on here, we're really referring to UK and EU homeowners, because over here we have cover holders with binding facilities to do that, but we don't have that in the UK. So the bottom line is, it's not economically efficient for the brokers to handle that. We call it service companies. Over here you'd call that a program to run that business through. It makes it more efficient. Now, the Corporation of Lloyd's doesn't and never has and never will write any insurance or reinsurance at all. I work for the Corporation of Lloyd's. It runs the market. If you go to a grocery market, say the one up in Fairfax, somebody runs the market. In our case, that's called Lloyd's. The stallholders pay to be there because they run the market. That's what the 57 managing agents are. They are effectively the stallholders, and they run their syndicates. Nobody works for the syndicates. That's where the capital is housed. The managing agents supply all the underwriters, claims people, actuaries, etc. to run those syndicates, and combined, they'll write about 40 billion for the year. Lloyd's three main functions, as I told you, is the ratings, licenses, and Lloyd's central guarantee funds. It does a lot more than that, but those are the three main functions of Lloyd's. There are ratings, as I told you. The members are the ones that put up the capital. So we have 133 corporate groups. I'll show you a lot of those. We still have 528 individuals, unlimited liability. They're in exactly the same position as the day Lloyd's Coffee House opened back in 1688. Unlimited means what it says, they're liable for their last table and chair. Sadly, back in the late 80s and early 90s, some of them lost pretty much all they had. But that number will continue to decrease. It'll disappear because we're not taking any unlimiteds. However, 1,496, that number keeps going up, just turn themselves into limited liability operations, so they're corporate capital, basically. The 133 represent about 90% of our capital, the 528 about 3, and the 1,496 about 7. So the 7 is a good use of capital for us at Lloyd's. So in a nutshell, the business comes in from the left, the capital from the right. Corporation of Lloyd's, we loosely call the franchisor, holds the licenses, ratings, responsible for the Lloyd's Central Guarantee Fund, and the franchisees are those 91 syndicates run by the 57 managing agents, and they'll write about 40 billion for the year 2014. Here you can see them. I had a plaque downstairs, but if you just look, you've got Travellers down here, you've got Chubb up there, you've got Liberty. Where's Liberty? They're on here somewhere. There's Liberty. You've got Ace, you've got XL, etc. Why are they coming into Lloyd's? I explained to it. They want, if they can get into the international business easily, they can get through Lloyd's, they get the benefit of all our licenses, which is extremely attractive. We probably turn away about 99% of people that come in at the moment, purely and simply because we don't need the capital. Nothing wrong with them, we just don't need more capital. So it's a very difficult balancing act. Imagine if you're an ongoing entity, and all of a sudden we've flooded the market with new syndicates, and they don't bring anything to the table. All they do is dilute the business that's already in Lloyd's. You're not going to be happy about that. So we want to make sure we have to play that balance pretty carefully as to who we let in. CNA owns Hardy. So you've got a very good cross-section of international business there. All the fun stuff, like Holly Madison, is written by what we call the Watkins Syndicate down here. Don't be put off because they're kind of small. They're also the lead in the energy market, and they're owned by Munich Re. So you've got the one guy that does all that. He's a friend of mine, but he does it through the Munich Re. So here you can see, if you look at the split our capital, 20% comes from various worldwide countries. You can see some of the names up there. Bermuda's 15%, US is 21%, gives you an idea who they are. The rest of it's in the UK. The average size syndicate's premium income today is about $500 million. I'll take you back to 1981. I said we had 91 syndicates. Back then we had 492. But the average size syndicate premium income back then was $7.5 million. So if we lost 2 or 3 syndicates back then, yes, it hurt those people who were invested in those syndicates. Wasn't life-threatening to the Society of Lloyd's as a whole. Today, with average-sized syndicates, $500 million, if one went belly up and we didn't know it, it could blow up Lloyd's Central Guarantee Fund, which is why we had to change the way we do business, which I'll show you in a couple more slides. But the size of the syndicates is very, very large these days. So the only thing I hadn't told you on there is we can write reinsurance in every state, and we do. The rest of it I told you. So, what are the market and the corporation priorities? The number one priority at Lloyd's has never changed, not since I've been around. Make an underwriting profit. The investment income, as most of you know, who do finances these days, you can see it maybe through a microscope. Therefore, you've got to make an underwriting profit. We're looking at 93 combined over time. That's very hard to do these days, but the bottom line is you have to do that because we get cat perils, and over time we're going to get good years and bad years. But the investment income is extremely low, and most of the time, if in days gone by, when inflation was high, you could run 105, 107 combined ratio, and your investment income will bail you out. That's no longer true, so it's a different mindset now. The other thing is we have to make sure at Lloyd's that the market's attractive for you and everybody else and all the brokers who want to come and do business there, plus the capital providers as well, and we've got to continue to make it more efficient. And it is efficient, but it's not as efficient as it could be, and we're always working on that. So the priorities, market oversight, show you that on the next slide. Solvency II, that's a European directive out there. Basically all it says is that every insurer operating in Europe must have adequate capital to support the business that they're writing. Nothing wrong with that, but it's been put off and put off and put off for a long time coming in, and it's been very expensive to get everybody up to scratch. Why has it been put off? Well, we've had other priorities in Europe, as you well know, Greece, Italy, Portugal, Ireland, etc. And they still haven't got around to quantitative easing, but we seem to be getting closer to that now, so eventually things will improve over in London. But bottom line is that Solvency II is supposed to come in probably at the beginning of next year or the year after. But it does make sense. All our claims at Lloyd's are basically handled electronically. If your claim is less than $150,000, which is 75% of Lloyd's claims, you only need the lead underwriter to sign off. So if you've got 20 on the slip, you only need the lead underwriter. If it's within the other 25%, over $150,000, you only need 2. You used to have to get everybody. So this has improved the market. And I'll show you how we try to help the market operate. Now, if you look, this is what PMD does. This is performance management. It was started in 2002. It was started as a result of losing syndicates after 9/11. Every syndicate prior to 9/11 did a business plan. But they had nowhere to send it at Lloyd's, so what did? They shoved it in their bottom drawer and they just carried on. Well, we noticed they have to go through a process every year, and they have to file it at Lloyd's. So the process starts on around the 22nd of June each year. You've got to get your business plan together. They're probably doing it on a year-to-year basis. You've got to basically have it in front of the people at PMD, who are made up of ex-underwriters, claims people, actuaries, etc., who pour all over these by September 22nd. And by about the beginning of December, after a lot of discussion between the lead underwriter of each syndicate and PMD, they'll come to an agreement on what the business plan is going to look like. And it won't always be like the underwriter wants it. For example, if this gentleman here wants to suddenly write D&O, remember the PMD is looking at 91 of these, and there's a syndicate over here who's lost all his money at D&O. There's going to have to be a very good reason why he needs to start writing it, and we can control that. But the whole point is to make sure that we can understand what they're doing, and then they won't, we'll try and keep them away from Lloyd's Central Guarantee Fund. So after it's all been agreed, which will be at the beginning of December, they'll be off and running for 1/1/2015. Now how we monitor that is quarterly electronically. By line of business, they've got to put their numbers in front of PMD on a quarterly basis. We can see what's going on. And if there's something that's going on that's not in the business plan, or it's not understood by the people in PMD, they pick up the phone, call the underwriter, why are you doing this? We had no mechanism to do this before. And the bottom line is, if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, we can stop them doing it, and will. Or if it's something that's okay, then they can amend their business plan. Now, just like the Insurance Commission in the state of California can come in and take a company over because it's going down, so can PMD, and they did in 2004. One of our syndicates got out of their business plan, seemed capable of getting back in. So what did they do? They marched in, fired their underwriters, put the business into runoff. It did not hit Lloyd's Central Guarantee Fund. And the rest of the underwriters go, wow, this is pretty good because it costs a lot to do this. Somebody was watching the store. They don't hit Lloyd's Central Guarantee Fund, which is mutualised. Nobody had to put more money in. So they realised this was a good thing. And it's the only one that's happened since, and that's why we're monitoring it. I'll show you how capital assessments, tougher class of business, risk-based capital, you all understand that. Tougher class of business, the more capital you need. We had managed risk, CAT. The reason that people went out of business, because they underestimated the potential for an Armageddon like 9/11. They used their own models, and the numbers were too low. Now every Lloyd's syndicate must use the same numbers, and I'll show you some examples of those on the next slide. We're trying to set minimum standards. There's 4 quartiles of syndicates at Lloyd's. Top 2 are obviously the best. 3 and 4 just need help to raise the bar. We're not trying to throw them out. We're trying to increase their performance and raise the bar. And I'll show you some of the things we do to facilitate all that. So in a nutshell, these are the classics. We use 100 billion. 100 billion is an insured loss, not a market. It's an insured loss, not the overall. Uncle Sam will have to come in. If it's $100 billion loss, Uncle Sam will probably have to come in with 350, 400, another 500 billion. We'll all pay for that. Classic examples, Houston Ship Canal, Ike in 2008. It was a force 2, but it could have been a force 4. We would have had a whole different outlook. UK storms, European storms, we get a lot of those. Half of the UK, I was over in February, was flooded out. San Francisco earthquake. The one on the right, that's obviously New York City, Superstorm Sandy. Superstorm Sandy is running at about a $25 billion insured loss. We model it at 100. Superstorm Sandy was not a big loss. It might have been to those individuals who were involved in it, but it's not a big loss in relationship to what it could be. And that's what we've been pushing across. Remember, it was all salt water. That makes a difference. Last time that part of the world was hit by a major hurricane was in 1938. You can look that up. It was in 1897 before that. So we've got a lot of history there. Anybody ever watch Mega Disasters on the Discovery Channel? Watch that. They did one on this in 2005. We had a big art loss at Lloyd's. It wasn't their best, but where was it? It was in the basement. So where do hospitals keep all their good equipment? In the basement. What happened? They all got flooded out. There's a gentleman called Dr. Koss, who's a geologist. The last thing he says on that program is, if you've got anything of value, get it out in the basement. And of course, that didn't happen. So big learning curve for everybody to go through as to what can happen. And we'll probably push that near 125 in due course because the values are going up again and also more people are living closer to the water. Here's our hierarchy. I'm sorry I haven't got a picture of Inga there, but she's a really nice lady. John Nelson, he's just starting his second term as the chairman of Lloyd's. He came from outside the property business and the banking business. If he was to walk in here, he'd want to know what each of you did. He'd walk up to you and ask you. He's really interested in people and the market as a whole. Inga came from our business. She was the chief executive of Canopius just before she joined us. She spent 2 years living in Kansas City, worked for GE Capital, also worked for the Zurich. And she's really a breath of fresh air for us. She runs a blog. She has an open door policy, which is what we've always had at Lloyd's. So she's really good for us. Tom Bolt, he runs performance management. I've known him for about 25 years. He used to work for Mr. Buffett. And he's our second guy who's running performance management. The first guy started in 2003. Insurance prices were going like that. Since Tom's got there, they've been going down. Much more difficult to regulate a market like us when the prices are going down, much easier when the prices are going up. But he's a very interesting guy and he does a great job. Sean McGovern, he's our chief legal counsel. I've known him for a long time too. The FIO, which is the Federal Insurance Office here in the US, it's headquartered in Washington. It's run by Mr. McGrath, who used to be the Insurance Commissioner of Illinois, so we know him pretty well. We've been pushing that for a long time at Lloyd's. We don't have a problem with state regulation. The problem we have is there was nobody, and I'm part of the US, there was nobody from the US sitting at the international reinsurance table because the state regulators couldn't do that. Most reinsurance is done outside the US, London, Munich, Zurich, Bermuda, etc. So you needed somebody at the international table to find out what was going on. Sean McGovern is one of the board directors. He's the only person from outside the US on that board. They've issued a white paper. I don't think they're going to do much, but at least somebody's out there understanding what's going on, which is to our benefit as a whole. Global reach, classic stuff we do. We got policies for 100% of the Dow. Some of them we've had for 50 years plus. 84% of the Fortune 500, 95% of the FTSE in London, which is equivalent to the Dow. And we operate in over 200 countries and territories around the world. We've had a lot of those clients for a very long time. I'm sorry the map isn't there on this one, but it is if I do it on my laptop. US is our biggest market. Use 40 billion as the number, 38%. UK is 18, Europe 15, Far East, China, etc. is 12, and the South America is 8. Now what we're expecting over the next 10 years is we're going to grow by GDP. Therefore we're going to grow faster down in South America and China, etc., because their GDP is going to grow faster than it is in Europe and here. But and we are off and running in China. We've got offices in Shanghai and in Beijing. We've always written reinsurance out of China, particularly on aviation, marine and energy. And we will continue to grow in China, but it'll take a while. India, we can only write reinsurance. If you want to operate in India, they want to own 51% of any entity that operates there. Well, we're not going to give them that, nor is our friends at Walmart, but they're pushing to get in, and we'll keep pushing it. But here's the irony. In China, we have no clue what the legal system is. In India, we, the British, set it up. We can't write insurance business there. That's what we call in London sod's law. I mean, we'll have to figure this out at some point. But it will happen over time, and we'll keep pushing it. Brazil, we've got about 10 syndicates operating down there. They just went through the World Cup. They're going through the Olympics. They've got oil, and they're going to grow pretty fast. We have 22 syndicates operating in Singapore. They've been doing that for about 10 years. They write business in the Far East. The feeling was that people in the Far East wanted to deal with us in their own territory and their time zone. Fine, we'll put syndicates out there and we do it, and they do a pretty good job out there. So even if this was to go from 38 to 36 over the next 10 years, remember our income will go up, so the bottom line is this will still be our biggest market. If you look at our split of business, if you take the reinsurance, break it down, property's about 46. Casualty goes up to about 36, which includes all the professional liability lines, etc. Medical, mal, the others stay pretty much the same. If you look across the top line, the larger the number, say other America is 77%, just means we don't have a lot of insurance licenses down there. So you take the Chilean earthquake, for example, was a $12.5 billion loss. 8% of that stayed in Chile. 92% came out into the world reinsurance market. So as we get more insurance licenses, those numbers will go down. So the reinsurance market, probably if you take Lloyd's as one, it's got 60 reinsurers around the world operating, all right in the same business. You've got N number of insurance companies funneling down to a relatively small number of reinsurers. So reinsurance business, if you want to get into something that's really exciting, and I spent 27 years in it, you'll know what every insurance company is doing. I suggest you try and find a way into reinsurance. It's fun. So security, first tranche, about 70 billion. About 15 billion of that is capital and surplus. The rest of it's premium in, claims reserves, etc. In addition, there's $25 billion at Lloyd's. Each syndicate, depending on their size and their premium income, has to keep that number up. And Lloyd's Central Guarantee Fund today is about 5 billion. So we're writing 40 billion, and we could easily support, we can write probably at 2.5 to 1 if we could. That's 2.5 premium to $1 of surplus, but the market won't let us do that. So we've got adequate capital and surplus, but there's too much capital around to use it. Quietly, you financial guys, we consider ourselves quietly boring. 27% of cash, government bonds, corporate bonds. We never had any Greek bonds, Italian bonds. We have enough trouble with our own bonds. And as some lady reminded me the other day, I do a lot of these, as you can imagine. She said, well, you should have just put it in James Bond. That would have probably been the best thing, which was probably a bright idea. But quietly boring. When we get a cat loss, we're going to need it. And that's the point. Here's you can see that's in the trust fund. That's in Citibank in New York. It's about 12 billion. That's our collateral for our reinsurance surplus lines, plus the 2 admitted states that we operate in. That really doesn't change that much, but it's here on shore. That's the point. Ratings I did. Okay, results. Now, these are interesting because you'll see why I said 93 combined over time. Okay, I take you back to 2005, Katrina, Rita, and Wilma. Market came in at 112 combined. So for every dollar we took in, we paid out $1.12. Pretty good result considering that those losses were enormous. Then in 06 we came in at 84. 07 we came in at 86. 08 Ike, 91. Still made an underwriting profit. 09 86. Then a few things started to happen in 2010, like Chilean quakes and things like that. 93. And then everything happened in 2011. Particularly in the first 6 months, we were running about 114 combined. Why? Well, we had a second quake down in New Zealand. We had bushfires, etc. in Australia. Then there was a quake and a tsunami in Japan. And where did a lot of those manufacturing companies from Japan go to? Well, they piled into Thailand, into a new industrial park, and they're all in the same place, and it got flooded out. Then you also had 2 major, as you may recall, tornado losses, Joplin and etc., all within the first 6 months of the year. We're running at 114. Now, we at Lloyd's think a little differently than most. We don't like to have a lot of losses, but when we have a bad year, we don't mind it being real bad. We'd have run at 130. All I'm saying is, if we'd had a $100 billion loss in Miami, Don't hurt anybody, just blow the place away, as we say. We'd have come in at 130. The naive capacity, as we say, would not have come into the market. Prices would have gone up and the market would have been potentially more stable. It wouldn't have been as good for the buyers, but it would have been good for the industry. Well, obviously that didn't happen. We came in at 107. The whole market and reinsurance industry came in around that number. There was no destruction of capital, huge amount of losses. So it shows you out there there's a huge amount of capital. There's more capital come in since. What does it take to turn the market? Don't ask me anymore. But it's got to be at least two losses, maybe $100 billion insured loss and another 50 in the same year to get people's attention. Now, the point is, why do we have years like 86 and 84? We didn't get a wind, we didn't get a quake. So we're going to get bad years, yeah, so we've got to balance those off. So when we get our results are good, you can see we didn't have a wind or a quake. 2013, had another good year, came in about 87. Our peer group came in at 93, so we did a little better than most of them. 16% ROE, that is good. But it's not a good advertisement to put out there when you've got pension funds and hedge funds going, oh, I can do it for less than that. And then they come in and they start writing a lot of Florida business, etc., driving rates down. Our June results just came out 10 days ago. Here again, for the first 6 months, we're running at 88 combined. 16.5% ROE, sounds good, but you advertise that, only gets more people in. Pension funds they can run at 5 or 6 ROE. A lot of your financial people know that. They just don't have any investment income, so okay, we'll put up an amount of money to write cat business in Florida. And as you financial guys probably well know, and ladies, the amount they put up is big for the insurance business, but in relationship to their capital, it's quite small. So it's interesting to see how long they'll be around. So these are good results, but sometimes you can send the wrong message with those. And you can see there, looking through to 2012, we run about the same as Bermuda. US P&C, European P&C tend to run about the same. The only reason reinsurers in the US are higher is because they don't write the insurance business. We do, so it just balances out a little bit. There you can see, look at the blue lines. Those are cat losses in the US. We understand those perfectly. We've been doing those forever and a day. But look what happened in 2010 and 2011. Those yellow lines are all ex-US. Basically, as I said earlier, maybe 60 reinsurers if you took Lloyd's as one. The same reinsurers are writing in the US as they're writing internationally, so they're all going to pay for this. There isn't a separate pot of money for the US or Australia or anywhere else. It all goes into one. So we have to try and make it up with increasing prices, which is very difficult to do. 326 years, yeah, we changed since we started from marine. We do everything else as well. I'll show you these. You can look all these up. They're all on PDF. You can download them. We do white papers. This is just an example. Space weather. We do behavior. We do pandemics, and Ebola is a pretty good example of that right now. Arctic opening. We just did one on removal of wreck. We suggest that Lloyd's, you do not go on a cruise with an Italian captain who likes to sail too close to the edge of the land. That loss was a whole value of about 700 million. Liabilities of 300 million. It's running at 2 billion. The rest of it was salvage. It's been towed to Genoa and it's been scrapped. Why wasn't it scrapped where it was? Because the Italian government wouldn't let anybody do that. It was a very expensive operation, but we all learned from those. We put all these out to help the market and the syndicates know what's going on. We also do a lot, obviously, on climate change. We don't call it global warming anymore. All we know is, well, one of the things we really know is we write a lot of cat business, oceans are rising, and therefore when you get windstorms and things, the wave wash is higher. And as you're doing that, as we have to price this stuff, we need to know as much as we can. So we use universities like you and everybody else all over the world. They're all studying this sort of stuff so we can help the market understand what the issues are, what's going on with Arctic opening, how can you price your product for the reinsurance product going forward. So that's what we do a lot of. And you can get these off Lloyds.com. So Lloyd's on America, we're pretty thin on the ground. Hank Watkins, he'll be here tomorrow. He's our president, he's in New York. He came from Willis. He's been with us about 5 years. Joe Gunsett runs the legal team in New York. They handle the 50 jurisdictions here in the US. I'm told I have to keep as far away from the regulators as possible. That suits me fine. Kieran Bovan, she spent 2 years in New York. She's in London. You would not see a presentation. It wasn't for her because I couldn't put one of these together, so she does all that. Gentleman in Boston, Glenn Dorr, he's been with us for about 2 years. He runs the Northeast. Rod Smith, he's headquartered in Atlanta. He used to work for ICAT, which is one of our syndicates, and he handles the down in Florida and everything else. Pat Talley, he's in Frankfort, Kentucky. Because we're admitted in Kentucky and Illinois, he runs the Midwest. We're the biggest writer in the US Virgin Islands. Hank Fusnick is there. He's our attorney in fact down there. 20% of his time is done doing that. Why are we the biggest writer there? Because we write a lot of wind. And I've got the rest, and you can see I've got Texas. And when I first joined Lloyd's in 2004, in 2005 I called the lady who was running, the president at the time, I'd known for a long time. I said, who does Texas? She said, good idea, you do. I'm going, how am I going to tell them they're part of the West? Well, you'll find a way. So I went down there, first meeting I went to, I said, look, you're part of the West. My geography's poor, I speak funny, but this is our biggest state and it's important. Fine, and I've been going down there ever since, and I do a lot of universities down there too. It is our biggest state because of all the energy business, and I do the rest. And I don't get to Hawaii very often, but we were there for a convention this year. My wife is the next flight attendant for American Airlines. She comes along with me. She doesn't go to Detroit, but she does go to Carmel, Whistler, Hawaii, and things like that with me. She's very good at picking her spots, and I do the rest. So that we do probably about $3.5 to $4 billion a premium in my area alone. That's 10% of Lloyd's business, which is a lot. We attend every convention you can think of. Over the years, when I was an underwriter, we weren't very specialised. We all did everything. Nowadays, everybody's specialised. So all the conventions they have today, they all have a different speciality. So we attend most of them because our Lloyd's syndicates are there. And we represent the market as a whole, and our client is the Lloyd's syndicate and the managing agent. They're the ones that pay for us. And everybody in life needs to remember who their clients are. Those are definitely ours. We do a lot with the brokers, but we're the managing agents are our clients. So we're out a lot, and we tell them when they're not here, we are. There's a reasonable example of what we do. And I mean, I've got to be next week. I'm in Chicago. The week after that, I'm in Dallas. The week after that, I'm in Scottsdale. And the week after that, I'm in Las Vegas. So these are it's convention season. It happens twice a year: April, May, and now. There's an example of the ones we go to. Of course, you're featured right there at the top. But we do a lot of these. We do a lot in the various schools. We like you guys a lot. It's always fun for me, for an old guy, to be surrounded by a lot of young people. The bottom line is we want you in our business. Okay? People of my age can tell you this. We've got gaps in our business below me. 5 and 10 years we didn't have anybody. Why? Because we had hiring freezes and all that sort of stuff. Pretty foolish. The acceleration rate now for people like you in our business, you're going to see it open up much quicker than probably would have been when I did, because we've got these gaps and people are trying to fill them now, and they need to do it fast, and everybody's aware of that. Biggest state, this doesn't include reinsurance: Texas, California, Florida, New York, Louisiana. That's really never changed. That's the way it is for most people. We're the largest surplus line writer at the present time. But we are the only one with a guarantee fund, which, as I'm always trying to tell the brokers, is definitely a benefit for our insureds and for them. In terms of reinsurance here in the US, if you purely deal in the US, National Indemnity, that's Buffett, is the biggest. QBE, we're number 3. If you look at it internationally, which I always do, it's Munich, Swiss, National Indemnity, Hanover Re, and we're number 5. Look how quickly those numbers fall off. You can get to 60 and you're down there pretty quick. So you've got a huge number of insurance companies and a very few reinsurers. And if you want to talk about reinsurance after this, I will, because it's a very different business. Cover holders, these are guys who have binding authority. There's now over 800 of them. That slide's not up to date. California, Texas, Florida are the big ones. Why? Quake, wind, etc. We try to provide a lot of aggregate for wind. We do tier 1, tier 2. We do a lot in Florida, obviously, and we will continue to do that. So to sum up, we're capital efficient. We're basically a mutual underneath, which makes it we need less capital up front, which makes us very efficient to operate. Subscription market, lead and follow. Brokers in London can get a lot of capacity together extremely fast. Diversity of market competition, different people, different ideas, makes the market flourish. A lot of underwriting expertise, huge amount of claims expertise, a bit more flexibility, more innovation. Ratings are fine, best S&P and Fitch. Consistency of underwriting and claims people is big for us because it's big for our long-term clients, and we got some big ones. Boeing, Disney, and Chevron are 3 I can name off the top of my head. And Lloyd's market has no tail prior to 1/1/93. So we've been around a long time, but our tail cut off back when Mr. Buffett took it over. So 2025, this is the last slide. Yeah, I told you earlier we're going to grow by, obviously, GDP. So we're going to grow faster in the Far East. But we're going a bit further than that. We're looking for capital from that down in South America and the Far East too. Most of our capital at Lloyd's is Western capital. China Re's already in, behind Catlin. We expect to see the People's Insurance Company of China in. We expect to see Ping in. We've got a couple of big insurers down in Brazil that will probably come in. And not only that, we're trying to encourage the people to come in. Lloyd's has made a deal with the British government. So if we get a lot of Chinese or people coming in, they can stay for 2 years, learn the market, etc. And when they go back, they'll understand how we operate. We are the biggest invisible earner to the UK government. So they understand that there's an issue here. We need to educate everybody. We'll always be a broker market, and we'll continue to do that. And our overseas hubs, as I said earlier, are Singapore, Brazil. We've just opened up an operation in Dubai. We'll see how that goes. China, and we'll hopefully hope to open up in India. So hopefully that gave you a bit of an idea what Lloyd's is all about. Hopefully you got a better understanding of what we're about. As I always say to the brokers, there's my email address. You can call me, gripe at me, etc., whatever you want to do. And I thank you very much for coming. This has been great for me. I hope it's been good for you. And if you've got any questions, you can ask me, whatever you want to do. But thanks a lot for having me in, and I appreciate it.
Goodie for you. Okay.
If anybody has any questions, fire away.
I have a question, I guess.
Go ahead.
So if I wanted to move to the London branch, how would I be able to do that if I'm a U.S. citizen?
That's a very good question, and it's not easy to do. You can get a work permit for a year, and they may extend it for another year, and that's probably it. Oh, shut that down. Bottom line is, what you need to do is try and work for, say, Hiscox, Catlin, Beazley. There's quite a few syndicates in London who have operations over here. If you want that information, I'll give you a card in a minute and you can get it. But that's a good question because you can do it, but you can do it from here. I met a couple of people from here today. One of them's from the UK, one of them's from France, and they were both interested in doing it in London. Obviously they can because they've got an EU passport, so that they can do that. But you can do it. And you can get an internship there. It's expensive though because you've got to get lodgings and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I have family that live there. So.
Oh, you do? Well then okay, you let me know, because I can get you in the door there. Yeah, that's not a problem. But if you've got family that lives there, that'll take the cost down.
Oh,
yeah, you can do that then. And what they'll probably do is they'll put you with a Lloyd's syndicate for say 3 or 4 months, and then put you with a broker as well. So.
Yeah, usually they're like twice a year. So
okay.
Email
me and we'll do that. But hopefully that gives you an idea. Yeah, we can do these things. These can work, but it's normally the expense is living accommodation. But you haven't got that problem, so that's good. Get them to give you a UK passport. Yes, of course. Anybody else wants my card? Of course you can. Help yourself to the Titanic slips if you want. If you haven't got one, I've got plenty here, and you can take copies of those.
Yeah, I actually have a question about
Go ahead.
Underwriting profit instead of investment profits, but we understand that like Warren Buffett size insurance industry, make profit by investing the premium they collect. Well, when you kind of like not focus on investment profit, does that mean that you're charging a higher premium than your competitors?
No, not necessarily, but we have always tried to run an underwriting profit, less than 100. The investment's in there to help you out if you get that wrong. And in days gone by, you could do that. You could run, in 83, 84, you could run at 110, but the investment income was high because inflation was high and you got plenty of investment income. So that may be 12% and you came in at a profit. That's no longer the case because you might be getting, it depends, we're very conservative the way we invest. So if you get 2%, yeah, it's a reasonable amount of money or 40 billion, but it's not going to bail you out. There is no insurer that's ever gone out of business because of its expenses. It's gone out of business because it wrote too much business it didn't understand, and it went down. Yeah?
So you said 38.6% of your business comes from the U.S.?
38%, yep.
But what is the largest type of insurance that you give in the U.S.?
The largest types, probably reinsurance catastrophe cover. It's one of our biggest. Included in that would be straight commercial earthquake, wind. We do a huge amount of professional liability, including EPLI. A lot of aviation, a lot of marine. Yeah, a lot of marine. The airlines too.
Okay.
A lot of marine. A lot of hull and cargo. So our biggest line is probably in the US is probably energy as a class, but overall it mounts up pretty quick. Yeah, there's not a class we're afraid of. We're only afraid of everybody else coming in and reducing the price. Well, again, thank you all very much. This was great.